What's up, crypto gang? Welcome back to another episode of Hack Crypto, where we hack our cryptocurrency education. And if you guys are brand new here, we do a giveaway at the beginning of every single episode. Today's winner is YU Octa. Thanks so much for commenting on the previous video, YU. I just sent you some crypto. On this special episode, I sit down with Andrii, the CEO and founder of Ambisafe. We've been working with Andrii and Ambisafe to grow your base for a few months now. And if you guys are brand new, we rolled out a SpaceX offering using Ambisafe's partnership on the Grow Your Base platform. So you can literally earn fractionalized pieces of SpaceX shares on the Grow Your Base platform. So they are doing incredible things for giving people access to these private companies and these public companies. So it's a really robust, developed program that's been around for a long time. Andrii's been around for quite some time in the crypto space. He exchanged emails with Satoshi. I've seen screenshots of it. One of the bright shining stars of Ambisafe is the regulatory compliance. I try to mention this often on the channel because it's important to follow the rules. Laws aren't going anywhere. Regulations change from time to time, but they're intended to protect people. And when I see a company like Ambisafe following these guidelines and regulatory compliance to the T, I like to mention that, and I like to give praise and give credit where credit is due. So without further ado, let's dive into my interview with Andrii, the CEO of Ambisafe. What's up, guys? I am here with Andrii, the founder and CEO of Ambisafe. How's it going, Andrii?
It's going well. Hi, everyone. Thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, definitely. And we're both in quarantine, sitting in our own houses. And I'm floating in space, and Andrii's in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm pretending to be at some beach.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Cool. So before we dive into Ambisafe, can you just kind of share your background, how you came into crypto, and how you came up with what Ambisafe is?
Yeah, I started developing my own cryptocurrency before it became a trend. Far before, in 2009. I was experimenting with time banks and various economic models for internet-based currency while still based in Ukraine. I was looking for a platform to launch online business that would not be attached to a local financial system that was very corrupt and inefficient. And shortly after, I found that some Japanese guy called Satoshi Nakamoto released something very similar to what I was trying to launch, called Bitcoin. And then I started launching businesses on top of Bitcoin, starting 2012, with a merchant service that allowed websites to accept payments similar to PayPal. Then some exchanges, and then more sophisticated stuff like wallets, stable coins, and dozens of other projects. I don't want to dive too deep into that.
Nice. So doing it before it was cool. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. So what led you to Ambisafe? It sounds like you were creating various projects. What led you to it, and what is it?
Yeah, so the thesis for starting Ambisafe in 2015 was that most of the companies that will use the blockchain technology are not technology companies themselves. Like most of the companies that use Microsoft Office are not software companies who develop tools like Microsoft Office. There are some other kinds of businesses that need software for their business use cases. And it was the thesis for Ambisafe. It was an attempt to launch a universal enough platform for issuing tokens, launching cryptocurrency wallets, and so on, that can be used by non-tech companies, other businesses that will actually use the technology for their business use cases. And I've launched Ambisafe in 2015, and our first client was Tether. It was the first stablecoin that was being launched there. They were looking for wallet software, which we happily provided. And so Ambisafe became the first blockchain software company in B2B space in this way.
Got it. And I think one of the things that I wanted to touch on, and I've done a lot of research on, is tokenization. And at Grow Your Base, we're we fundamentally believe that tokenization is going to be a game-changing concept for a lot of different assets. But what are your thoughts on tokenization in general when it comes to, these real world assets that we can tokenize?
I think about it as switch to digital in first place, and then blockchain as a specific technology implementation of digital signatures. But the larger trend that I see is happening is a switch of business processes to digital form. Processes are moving from paper to electronic databases. And whenever it happens to any process, it usually becomes 100 times faster and more efficient and 1,000 times cheaper. And tokenization is a very general term for for implementation of some business process. Often the whole ecosystem of processes for some industry on the blockchain. So I think it has a very big and bright future, but it wouldn't be called tokenization long term. It would be called digital signatures and so on, because token is a very limiting concept. You can do much more with digital signatures, digital identities, and electronic databases in general.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be, it's a great progression, moving things digital and then moving it even further and into blockchain and leveraging that. So in terms of what Ambisafe is for the people, like if my mom is listening to this, if the older people that are, wanting things simplified down, how would you simplify it down? And what are you guys doing around like tokenization?
Sure. Ambisafe is a software company that specializes in creation of digital contracts. Like before blockchain, you would normally, whenever you need a contract, let's say you are running some business and you need a contract to sell something to your customers, you would go to a lawyer. Now you can go to Ambisafe or similar platforms that offer smart contract version. It's called smart contract, or the digital version of the process, so you don't have to create the contract manually with your lawyer. So we are the creators of digital contracts, and specifically we specialize in financial markets, issuance of securities like shares of companies, various revenue share agreements, and coupon codes and similar like units of value that people usually trade with each other.
Got it. And that's a good segue into what happens if a company isn't public? Like how do they get liquidity in terms of with these? Because I'm fascinated by security tokens. I think it's a fun topic.
Yeah, that's a good question. So public companies have been historically, like up until 1980s, public companies were also traded in paper form. Like brokers and stock traders would bring stacks of shares or stacks of paper to the floor of New York Stock Exchange and similar exchanges, and would trade them manually with like exchanging pieces of paper to dollars. And then once the volume became too high, that process was moved to digital form because there was a so-called paper crisis when the volume was just too high to handle it manually anymore. So the stock exchanges switched to digital databases and gradually moved the process of trading stocks to digital form. It's been done for public companies, but up until recently, like last 5 years, the demand for trading private securities wasn't so high. So there wasn't a strong incentive or demand to switch the process of trading of private securities to digital form. So this is why up until like last year, most of the private transactions, let's say you wanted to buy an equity of Uber or Airbnb before they went public, and you even found some investor who was like, let's say, early investor in that company, or some employee who wants to get rid of their stock options. You found them. The time to execute that transaction would be a week at least, for all the legal work, all the negotiations with like brokers, company, stock transfer agreements, and so on. That process wasn't touched at all by digital technologies and digital platforms. And now, once companies are choosing to do IPOs at later and later stages, there is a growing demand to switch the process of private trading to digital form, because regardless of when the company does IPO, the number of investors that company has is proportional to the size of the company and the age of the company, but not the decision of whether they've decided to go public or not. So the demand for trading still, like the demand for high frequency trading of some kind, still happens at 7th to 10th year of existence of the company, but a lot of companies choosing to do IPO much later. And the solutions that we are developing, that we've developed and launched in certain jurisdictions, we are moving the process of trading of private securities to digital form, so people can trade, so people can execute the private market transactions in a matter of minutes, sometimes seconds, compared to weeks for private companies.
Got it. Yeah, and one of the things that sticks out the most about Ambisafe is the fact that you guys are like absolutely by the book in terms of following regulations. I think that's one of the things that probably, I mean, it's amazing what you guys are doing, but what sticks out to me the most, I think, is like the regulatory compliance part. Like you guys are following security laws like hyper closely, and I think that's good. It's like a slow and steady approach to this, which is the correct way when you're dealing with, securities. I think it's a really important concept that's really underplayed in the space. A lot of people are under the impression, the Facebook of move fast and break things, but in reality, when it comes to securities, you need to be very careful. And you guys have done a good job of being very compliant. And I think that's something notable that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, our long-term mission is to switch to migrate financial markets to the blockchain. And I don't believe a business can scale outside of to any significant form outside of government's regulatory framework or outside of law. You can exist outside of jurisdiction, like some small internet companies choosing to exist up until certain scale, like up until you have like more than 10 employees or certain turnover, but eventually you need to set up offices, hire people in various states with various employment laws, they will want to pay taxes and all this compliance related things. You just can't exist outside of jurisdiction at certain scale. And because we are serious about growing blockchain-based financial markets, since 2017, when regulations started to get clarified in this area, we've been developing infrastructure to trade the legitimate shares of companies on the blockchain. So we've developed framework for issuance of shares that are as compliant as legit and compliant as paper shares, but they only exist in digital form on the blockchain. And we have this framework working in multiple jurisdictions for multiple projects. We've invented way to generate legitimate state requirements compliant cap tables from a decentralized network of exchanges that trade the tokens. I don't I don't think it's ever been done before. And yeah, we are pretty deep into this and excited to innovate more.
That's awesome, and that's a great thing of saying that you're focusing on the fact that no one's done this in the past. Is there anyone else doing this concept? Like, I know you mentioned that how you guys are specifically doing those with various decentralized exchanges, but are there other tokenized interests in private companies? Like, I'm sure we're working together on Grow Your Base with a couple exciting projects in the future that are rolling out. But in terms of like other people, do you see anyone in the space that you're excited about? Maybe not that's a competitor, but anybody that's similar into what they're doing.
Some real estate tokenization projects look pretty promising. They apply both tokenization and fractionalization to the real estate, and so they are decreasing the entry barrier. So you no longer have to spend 100K or more. If you want to start investing in real estate, you can invest $100 and still get proportional returns. We haven't touched real estate market yet. We specialize in pre-IPO companies. We've decided to go from bigger to smaller. So the hypothesis is that if we can bring some high quality large companies to the blockchain markets, it will show the legitimacy of this market as a market to a broader investor audience. So this is why we've been launching projects that offer equity in unicorns like SpaceX, Airbnb, and more companies are work in progress. But yeah, I saw multiple interesting projects. Just for small companies, it's more difficult to get traction due to the current market situation. Blockchain lost a significant amount of trust due to the hype in 2017, and I think it's going to take some time for the markets to rebuild the trust in this market in general.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been around for a long time in the space, and like I've mentioned in the past, I've been in through multiple bull and bears, and after Mt. Gox happened, the similar situation where it was just a desert. Like no one was touching it. It was extremely quiet. People were really freaked out because it had gone up and down so quickly after Gox. People legitimately thought it was just over when Gox happened, because it was such a huge event that took place, and
and it was the only exchange, or about one of 3 or 4 that existed. And I think over time, as market gets more mature and with more participants, more companies, people will understand that failure of one project doesn't affect the whole industry or doesn't mean much for the technology in general.
Yeah. So what's coming this year? Like, what can you share with us about what's coming to Ambisafe?
Yeah, so this year, as I said, we're working on tokenization of the so-called unicorn companies, companies that are at the stage where most of the companies would do IPO, but they've decided to not do IPO for some reason. So we found a way to offer a fractionalized equity of those companies through multiple blockchain-based platforms like Orderbook, Raison, Grow Your Base, and others. I think we'll stick to the large size companies this year that have significant demand among the investors, and then later we'll start offering smaller companies. So why I think it's important is we are one of the most important parts of our mission is financial inclusion. I think because of the lower cost of transaction, blockchain enables financial inclusion. It decreases the minimal size of transaction that makes economical sense for brokers and platforms of all kinds. So instead of having to invest a minimum of $50,000, $100,000 if you wanted to buy equity of SpaceX or Airbnb last year, we made it possible to invest as little as $100, which increased the potential audience to like hundreds more millions of people, and it's a broader financial inclusion. I believe that we are doing good thing for the world by democratizing financial markets.
Yeah, and what countries can people participate?
Yeah, it's most of the Europe, Asia, Canada, UK, South America. Most of the countries who haven't issued any regulation about the blockchain, we consider it okay to be selling there, and we are selling through like some regulated brokers in EU. Yeah, it's the specific configuration of the sales process is different for every jurisdiction, but I'd say people in most of the world can participate. Not in the US yet, unfortunately. It's going to take some effort, but we are working on it.
Got it. So where can people find out more?
Yeah. Where can people? Yeah, so for Airbnb, it's uair.info. For SpaceX, it's uspx.info. Just Google USPX token or uair token, and from there you can find more.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Andrii, and everybody. The links will be in the description below, but thanks again for coming on, Andrii.
Thank you for hosting me, Steve.
That is it for my interview with Andrii, the CEO of Ambisafe. It's a lot of fun sitting down with him, a lot of things coming down the pipeline, including a couple of really special offerings that we're going to be rolling out on Grow Your Base. So that is it for this episode. If you guys like this video, slap a like. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more of these interviews in the coming weeks here. And that is it. I will see you guys on the next episode of Hack Crypto.